Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The World Today, where we bring you the latest updates from around the world. I'm Raham Morsi, and I'm joined this afternoon by Mr. Amir Nabile, Managing Editor at Mina News Agency. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Let's start with our first news item from the Daily News of Egypt that reads, Mamish reviews Suez Canal development with Prime Minister Ismail. The news item itself reads, Prime Minister Sharif Ismail meets with the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority. Vice Admiral Mohammed Mamish said the meeting addresses the development projects of Suez Canal. Mamish reviews with the Prime Minister the work of the canal and the recent developments of the canal access. It's been a while since we heard news about the Suez Canal access. How do you think this is going to be beneficial for Egypt?
It's very beneficial in the forecasting. Any studies in the economy arena and all these kind of studies say that it is very beneficial for our economy and for our future of mega projects for the next generations. We have to be believing in that and try to help the government and help the president for this kind of projects to be success in the future, near future, and to attract more and more kinds of such kinds of projects. And some projects are built in this mega project or attached with it.
Do you think that we're going to feel these benefits on the short run, or is it a long-term project?
Both, because I think in a while there's something like revenues from the more and more ships coming on the access of the Suez Canal, the new Suez Canal, and the mega project making kinds of revenues for the ships crossing this new crossing on the Suez Canal, new Suez Canal, and on the long run there's something like more and more projects attached here or there on the Suez Canal, the new one, and for the Egyptian businessmen or even for the foreigners.
Okay, let's move on to the next news item from Al Ahram Online that reads, Egypt condemns Sunday's Florida nightclub shooting. The news item itself reads, Egypt's Foreign Affairs Ministry condemned the Florida nightclub shooting on Sunday that left 50 people dead and dozens injured. The ministry expressed Egypt's condolences to the U.S. government and people in a statement released late Sunday. Egypt stands by the American people in these hard times and offers its condolences to the victims' families and wishes a fast recovery for the injured, according to the statement. The statement reiterated that Egypt believes it was necessary to fight terrorism, which has neither boundaries nor religion and contradicts all humanitarian principles and ethics. How do you see this statement by the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, and will it have some sort of impact on the U.S. administration?
All the time we are making our condolences on such kind of accidents of the terrorism worldwide, in the United States and in any other country worldwide. Egypt is standing with the people of they are the victim of such terrorism. Terrorism has no religion, has no boundaries. So we have to, all the countries, all the governments worldwide have to be unified against the terrorism, which is a big problem for all the countries, and more than any country, only one country. We have all to be unified against such kind of problem.
Do you think that what happened in Orlando, Florida is going to have an impact on the world, not just on U.S. policy?
I think this kind of accidents happening here or there from time to time in the United States, there's a lot of accidents happen there. We have witnessed such like people shooting without anything like shooting the children, shooting the elders, or something like that. Or maybe without any kind of protection for the people. We have to be aware about such kind of problems happening in the United States. Is something like sometimes it is even more dangerous like what's happening in our country. So we have not to be feared about any kind of threatening against what's happening here in Egypt. Egypt is not the only victim country for the terrorism. Terrorism is the ghost or the problem, big problem and big crime for the humanity worldwide. and we have to be aware about, to remind the world that it's not Egypt that it has the terrorism, and it's not Egypt that it has to make procedures for their economy or so on. We have to remind the United States about such kind of attacks and accidents to be unified against this worldwide crime.
Okay, let's move on to the World Bulletin that reads, Daesh group claims responsibility for Orlando nightclub shooting, Al Bayan Radio said. The news item itself reads, Daesh claimed responsibility for the shooting that killed at least 50 people at a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, in an official broadcast in the group's Al Bayan Radio. The group said in its broadcast one of the Caliphate soldiers in America carried out the security invasion, where he was able to enter a crusader gathering at a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where he killed and injured more than 100 of them before he was killed. Daesh has several times or on several occasions claimed responsibility for attacks that may not necessarily be related to them. Do you think this is the same thing?
It's a policy of Daesh, I think, to claim the responsibility about such attacks, to say that it is bigger than any kind of country and any government worldwide. It has fingers and hands, very long hands over the globe and over the world. Any attacks happening in Egypt, something like hijacking a plane or something like terrorism killed people or so on. Daesh is behind all the kind of such kinds of...
It does have reach worldwide. Even if they're like sleeper cells, but they're small cells, and they probably do exist worldwide.
It has some sleeper cells and so on, and it has hands here or there, and something like the media making, and it's playing its role about that at the same time. Sometimes we hear about Daesh is behind problem or attack here or in Egypt, like the Russian plane or so on. Sometimes shooting in France, sometimes shooting in Syria or so on, or especially in a country like it is in a way quiet and in a way normal life like Egypt and like France and like United States. When Daesh coming here and saying I'm behind that means that the security is not enough in this country, like in Egypt and like European states or so on. So it's making something like making dangerous and dangers for the people. The danger of Daesh is bigger than any kind of government and any kind of country or so on. We have to be unified against organizations of terrorism worldwide, and especially in Daesh, because there is something like hands of Western powers, maybe United States. We know that United States is accused that it is behind Daesh and backing Daesh, supporting it all the time, and it has created it even with the weapons and supporting it with all kinds of logistics and it has the responsibility about what's happening from Daesh. Now the United States has to face this problem and face what happened with something like this organization.
Do you think that the U.S. reaction towards this incident, especially after Daesh announced that they are behind this attack, will it change their way in dealing with these situations? And, for instance, would it affect the presidential elections?
Yes, we know that maybe in the presidential election, Trump is demanding Obama to resign and so on. We know that Daesh and trying to make something like a rebuff or something like a reply, a very violent reply against what's happening in between Syria and Iraq, and any strikes against Daesh here or there. So Daesh from time to time is making its claim that it is here and it has power and it has weapons. It can do more and more attacks against any country, and it is bigger than any country. We have to be aware about that and not to be deceived about any claims from Daesh. And we have to be against those kind of crime. Crime at the end has no backing from any country, and the countries and the government, the official countries and government, has to be unified against this terrorism.
Okay, let's move on to the Global Post that reads, Syrian activist survives Daesh group assassination attempts in Turkey. The news item itself reads, a Syrian independent media activist working in southeast Turkey survived an assassination attempt that was claimed by Daesh group. Ahmed Abdul Qadir, the founder of the Syrian media group Ayn Homeland, was shot Sunday afternoon by two gunmen riding a motorbike in the city of Sanul. Ayn Homeland, which disseminates news about Syria on its website and radio station, issued a statement saying 3 shots had been fired in the failed assassination attempt. Why is Daesh resorting to assassinations? This media activist group, the Syrian activist group, how could it be a threat to Daesh?
It has different kind of means, Daesh, against the people, the civilians and the independent activists and so on. It has to make some messages against activists, especially in particular, because those kind of activists has some impact over the people here or there. So Daesh trying to use its means, and from time to time they have managed to flee from them and escape from any kind of attacks or killing them or so on. So Daesh trying to making it silent about the tongues of the civilians, silent against them to say anything against Daesh organization or anything about their crimes. I think it is good news for the people to free from them, but at the same time, the government has to be at the face and at the front line of facing such kind of organizations.
Okay, let's move on to the next item we have from the Daily Star of Lebanon that reads, bomb blast hits bank in central Beirut, no casualties. The news item itself reads, a powerful explosion occurred outside the headquarters of the Lebanese Bloom Bank in the western part of the Lebanese capital Beirut late on Sunday, causing damage to the building. The sound of ambulance sirens were heard in areas near the busy shopping district of Hamra Street. The Lebanese Interior Minister said that the headquarters of Lebanon's Bloom Bank was the target of the bomb. In a statement to Lebanon's news agency LBCI, Lebanon's Interior Minister Nuhad Mushak said that no casualties reported explosion in Hamra. The question is, why are they attacking a bank? And why is it that there are no casualties? Do you think this is a terrorist act, or is this some sort of, I don't know, maybe financial thing?
I think any kind of attacks against economic building or economic organization is in particular a terroristic attacks. I think it is something like against the people and the civilian people, the civilian organization. We have to remember that Daesh is targeting, or any kind of terrorism organization is targeting economic organization, economic institution, economic buildings. We know that, and some people are saying about what's happening in Egypt, even in the fires in the buildings here or there. It's something like hands of terrorism in Egypt and in outside and in the worldwide. So any attack against a bank building or so on, I think it has hands of terrorism.
But there were no civilian casualties. Could it possibly be unrelated to an extremist group, but rather something, internal, for instance, because Lebanon has always been known to have, internal problems with different factions.
This is from history, yes. It has a long history of a bloody history between the sectarian violence and the people against each other and so on. But now it's, we thank God, it is stable rather, or something like that. But from time to time, no problem about making some explosion inside the capital of Beirut or the capital of here or there. To say that the organization is still active in such kind of country, and it has some impact over the policies of the government, even about the ministries, about Hezbollah, about the formation of the government, about these hands of hidden organization and so on. So the people is feared, or are feared about what's happening, and are feared from any kind of terrorism, and they are expecting more than worse of accidents like that.
Okay, let's move on to the next item from the Washington Times that reads Iraq makes arrests over reports of Sunnis executed in Fallujah. The news item itself reads Iraq is investigating allegations that Shia militiamen helping the army retake Fallujah have executed dozens of Sunni Muslim men from the city held by Daesh group. The authorities are following up on the violations. A number of arrests have been made. Government spokesman said that after the regional governor said 49 Sunni men had been executed after surrendering to Shiite factions. Governor of Anbar province, where Fallujah is located, that 643 men had gone missing between June 3rd and 5th, and all the surviving detainees were subject to severe and collective torture by various means. What's happening in Fallujah, do you think that this could be the spark for sectarian violence again in Iraq?
Hopefully, no, not to happen, I think. But Fallujah is a big city in Iraq, and it has a problem of, like all the cities in Iraq, there's something like sectarian violence and so on. But at the same time, when Daesh is there, or in some cities like Fallujah, it's a bigger problem, I think. And when executing the people from here or there, from sectarian or so on, it's another problem. The Iraqi people has to be unified against terrorism, unified against Daesh, unified against any impact over something like divisions or sectarian divisions between themselves.
So you think that the best, well, do you think that the Iraqis will actually follow through with this, though? Because obviously they've had problems with forming a unity government, well, not a unity government, but a technocratic government. They've had problems in parliament, and then the Daesh forces, taking Iraq or parts of Iraq. Do you think it's possible for the Iraqis to somehow unify?
Iraq has very complicated problems and very complicated formation of the people there, and it is a long history of divisions in sectarian divisions and in political acts and so on. So they have to be unified, and hope we have to help for Iraqi people to be unified against any problem for their interest and for the interest of the people and for the government.
Okay, let's move on to our next item. We have from the New York Times that reads, 1 killed in Istanbul explosion, gas leak suspected, according to CNN Turk. The news item itself reads, CNN Turk reported that an explosion in central Istanbul killed 1 person and injured another on Sunday after what could have been a gas leak. Emergency crews found the body of a street vendor at the scene in an apartment block in the upscale Sinegar neighborhood. It added a taxi driver was badly hurt when the falling cement hit his car. The TV station said that it was too early to say what caused the explosion, which also sparked a fire in an unoccupied flat. How do you see the security situation in Turkey? Do you think that this is really a gas leak, or is it a security lapse in Turkey because of Daesh, the Kurds, whatever it is?
We have to think about such kind of explosions has to, or might be something like terroristic attacks at the same time. But at the same time, it might be something like gas leak and just gas leak, and it needs something like procedures to protect such kinds of the gas stations or so on. But I think a state like Turkey has some procedure for protect the stations. So we have to think about, it might be, if there is something like possibilities of making of this is a result of terroristic attack or so on. I think in the next or the coming future or the near future, it has to be clear about what's happened there. But if we can expect, it might be some hands of terroristic behind this kind of attack.
Okay, finally, The Independent reads, Bangladesh arrests over 5,300 in a crackdown on extremists. The news item itself reads, authorities in Bangladesh are continuing a nationwide crackdown on thousands of criminal suspects who try to stop growing wave of brutal attacks on minorities and activists in the country. PD spokesman Kamal Ahsan said that police arrested 5,324 people over the weekend, including 85 suspected radicals. The majority of those arrested have petty crime records. More arrests are expected through the week. No one really understands what's happening with Bangladesh and what extremists and what minorities. Could you somehow explain that?
In a state like Bangladesh, and very near from India, very near from Pakistan, and so on, it has so many people of radical people from the Islamist radicals, or maybe from other sectarian people, from sectarian Buddhist or so on. It has so many religious here or there. So we have to remember that Bangladesh is very feared about something like what was happening in Kashmir.
Yes.
A very long history of war and violence between the Kashmirian people here or there, between Pakistan and Indian. So it has radicals, but a campaign like this, or something like raids and something like arresting thousands of people, is so many people arrested. It is a big problem for Bangladesh that we can understand about what's happening there.
Okay, well, sir, unfortunately, we ran out of time for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Al-Latif, I apologize for that,
No
for managing editor at Mina News Agency. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This brings us to the end of this episode of The World Today, but stay tuned for more updates on Nile TV.